Okay, folks, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good evening and welcome to this evening's meeting of the Woodbury County Zoning Commission. Today's date is January 22nd, 2024. The time is 5:02 p.m. Tonight's meeting will be audio taped and the minutes will be prepared. In respect to all parties, we ask those present to turn off cell phones or set to vibrate. Those in attendance are asked to legibly complete the attendance sheet upon the front table. I would like to take a moment to review the procedures the commission will follow tonight. First, the commission will handle the normal housekeeping agenda items. Then for each application on the agenda, I will open the public hearing on the item. The planning and zoning staff will then present the staff report, including the staff recommendation. Any letters or other communication received from the public prior to the hearing will be entered into the record. The applicant will then have the opportunity to present his or her case and respond to the staff report. Next, we will hear comments from the public. If you would like to speak either in support of or against the application, you must come to the microphone. Please first state your name and address for the record, and all interested parties should be heard, but repetitious comments should be avoided. Repetitious or irrelevant comments may be ruled out of order by the chair. I ask that you remain respectful and courteous with your comments at all times. We will limit those comments to 3 minutes tonight, please. After all public comments have been heard, the staff and applicant may make a closing statement. The hearing shall then be closed by motion and vote. Thereafter, no further comments from the staff, public, or applicant may be heard unless asked for by the commission. The commission shall then deliberate the case and may ask questions of the applicant, the staff, or any party offering testimony. However, such questions do not reopen the hearing for additional comments from the public unless so requested or approved by the commission. The commission will then formulate and vote on a motion. The motion will typically either grant or deny the requested application. Any commission member who has an ex parte communication to place in the record of this meeting should do so prior to the beginning of the deliberation of the respective agenda items. Second item is roll call. I'll let the record reflect that all commissioners are here tonight and present. The third item on the agenda is public comments on matters not on the agenda. Do we have anyone that has anything not on the agenda? Not on the agenda?
Hello, everyone. My name is Scott Hennings. I currently reside in Omaha, Nebraska at 8612 South 163rd Street. But I do have a shared ownership in 6701 6th Avenue of Sioux City, Iowa, 68106, which resides on 135 acres of land located southeast of Highway 20 and Highway 75. This property resides on the east side of Sioux City and the south side of Highway 20 across from the new Iowa DOT offices and facilities that are out west or out east there. I stand here before you today to make the community aware that this is a property that has been known to hinder the growth east of Sioux City and has been discussed between family members because my grandparents who have owned the property forever never wanted to develop this land. It was their farm ground. It was their land. It's been that way forever. Well, since 2009, it was their wishes to never develop while they were alive. Well, now that has passed. And I just wanted to make the community aware that that is no longer the case with this piece of property. I know it's definitely hindered future growth out east, and just wanted to make a statement here today to let everyone know that that's where that stands today.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Any others? Public comments on matters not on the agenda? Okay, we're going to move on to item number 4, which is approval of the minutes from November 25th or 27th, 2023. Do you do these separately?
Yes.
Do them separately. Okay, we're going to do those separately. So do you have any corrections, additions, deletions on November 27th minutes? If not, I'd accept a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Got a motion? Can I get a second, please? No, one at a time.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay. those
Chris,
minutes-
can you show me as abstaining on the minutes from 11/27 due to my
Yes.
absence, please?
Thank you. Okay, the next minutes are from January 17th, 2024. There any additions, deletions, corrections on those minutes? If there are none, I would entertain a motion.
So move.
We have a motion. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, those have been approved. Moving on to the next item on the agenda is item number 5, the zoning commission public hearing for proposed utility scale solar energy system zoning ordinance amendments, debate summary. Dan, do you want to read that information into the record, please?
Yes, again, tonight is a continuation of the discussion that we've had through a series of public hearings, beginning as far back as September 11th of 2023. Tonight's discussion continues the question on how Woodbury County plans to look at the possibility of the permitting of utility scale solar systems and locations other than the general industrial zoning district. So kind of just really briefly summarize the debate, really comes down to a lot of respects on whether agricultural land is appropriate or not for this technology. And 3 options that have been presented in the staff report are the possibility of a conditional use permit for industrial areas only. So one option is to retain it on industrial land while adding some features to the conditional use permit process. So that is one possibility. Another possibility is the establishment of an overlay district situation to look at a series of conditions on whether a particular area of agricultural preservation land would be appropriate or not for the siting of these utility scale solar systems. And then another option is we're in the midst of a approval process for the comprehensive plan for 2040, which is actually the second public hearing that we'll be looking at tonight. General scope of the development plan will be discussed following this discussion here. One of the areas to look at with that is possible mapping of any future areas as part of the development plan process, which would be helpful for option number 2 that I mentioned with the overlay district. So at this time, we've had definitely a lot of information that has come in, valuable information from the many perspectives of this debate. So the opportunity tonight, following a work session that the commissioners had on Wednesday, was to, of course, discuss the contents, but we all can better acquaint ourselves with the information. But tonight, again, is a continuation to take in additional information from the public on the different perspectives. And so one item that I want to report is we've had a couple communications come in since Wednesday. Mid-American Energy submitted some documentation to us on January 19th, 2024. Around 11 o'clock a.m., they basically looked at a few of the ordinance proposals in the packet for the meetings on the 17th as well as tonight. And they kind of went through and put little balloon comments on some of the ordinance regular information that was presented in the packet. So I would ask that the zoning commission receive this documentation into the record by motion and second, so we can have that be part of the viewable information for the minutes for the public.
Sorry, we need a motion to accept the email from Will Doherty from Mid-American Energy.
I'll make a motion to accept the information from Mid-American.
Okay, I have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, that's been accepted.
Okay, in continuation, we also received a comment, a letter from the city of Sioux City signed by Mayor Bob Scott that made reference to many of the concerns that Community Economic Director Marty Doherty of Sioux City referenced at the January 17th meeting, where the city kind of put on record their concerns about development of solar within the industrial area. They had some concerns about setbacks within the 2-mile area as well. And basically, kind of in summary, they have a concern with the general industrial areas being used for the solar development, for acres being taken out of commission for other items that could be used for benefits, such as moving the solar and water assets, those type of things. So that's generally the summary of the city of Sioux City's concerns. And I would ask that that be received.
Okay, we need to make a motion to receive the letter from the city of Sioux City. Make a motion.
So moved.
A motion, can I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, that letter's been accepted. Okay.
And this time I'd probably suggest
We
public
open
comments.
public comments. So we're going to do the public comment session of this time. So anyone that'd like to speak to this issue or this agenda item, I should say, is welcome to come forward. Please state your name and address.
Yeah.
And address. And please remember you have 3 minutes.
Yeah, we won't take that long.
Thank you.
David Lynn, 1410 Michigan Correctionville. I just wanted to stand in opposition of the solar in the ag preservation land. I think solar is very well suited to be in the industrial ground, and I wouldn't oppose that at all. But in reading through a lot of the literature there from your last packet, you also stated that it would be, there was one deal in there where it was up to 5% slopes, I think, where you thought it would be appropriate. And if you put a solar panel farm, you know, where they're right next to each other on a 5% slope and we get a 2-inch rain, you're going to have a mess. I mean, so I really think this needs to be in the industrial area where the ground is pretty well flat, or in river and creek bottoms. And that's why I think it should be an industrial area and not in the ag preservation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Dolph Ivener. I live at 3400 Talbot Road, and I would like to speak for solar installations in our county. I'm a solar installer, not on massive scale, on little scales. To address your concern, I have really steep hills, yellow dirt, and I put solar systems on them. They don't wash. There's plenty of sun that goes underneath the solar system. Effectively, it's sun. It hits the ground. It's no different than photosynthesis. It's effectively the same thing. Now, some neighbors don't like to look at it, but I'm afraid is this a slippery slope where my neighbor who grows Beck seeds tell me, oh no, we got to just grow Beck seeds here, right? We're not, no, you know, we don't want DeKalb or Pioneer. This doesn't increase traffic. This just sits on the land. It doesn't sit any taller than a corn plant. I mean, I raise good corn, get 12 feet tall. Top of a solar panel isn't over 12 feet tall. So, and another issue, I think there's a lot of complaints about taxes, right? I mean, if these guys were to put a big system in, I mean, what would the tax base be like to all the neighbors? Be a significant amount of money. And another issue is, and I saw it happen with the wind turbines, it's just pretty difficult. I think I worked pretty hard to pay my mortgage payments on my farms. And the idea my neighbor gets to take the right away from me for what I want to grow on my ground because they're going to look at it. It's a pretty steep, it's a pretty steep price for me to pay for my neighbors to take the rights away from me. So in closing, solar will be a good deal. It'll bring money to our economy. It won't create road traffic. I mean, nobody goes to, I mean, they just sit there in the sun and collect the sun. So anyways, I'm for it as a member of the community.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Renee Weinberg, 3905 Country Club Boulevard. I know people are concerned about agriculture or agricultural land being used. I think the proposal was that they would be planting grasses and plants underneath, which would be helping the ground, even if it had the solar on it, so that eventually that dies down and fertilizes the land, so it doesn't hurt the land. There's nothing hurting the land or taking it away from the future if this is ever moved. Solar panels can be moved. I believe it's also a proposal to have a fence around the entire area, which would block off the view if this upsets somebody or is concerned with, you know, this being something that's going to block their view or something. It's supposed to bring, it's a $440 million project. So I would think that would be a huge tax increase, job increases, clean jobs, clean energy, which is kind of the future that we're trying to work towards. Thank you.
Thank you. Else?
Hello, my name is Daniel Segura from 3114 Pierce Street, Sioux City, Iowa. And I don't live in the area. I have family that lives in the area. The way I see it, there's a reason why there's this ag conservation land, how it's been zoned that way. I think for many, the perspective of many, and I included in that, I think there would need to be a very good reason to change it after so many years of people in the public relying on that. I know that there's in many ways a shortage of farmers, mainly because there's lower incentives when we have not all land is suitable for use in farm. We have a lot of land that the soil's just not good enough. And so I think to just slowly be eating away at the soil and we also know a few things that have been brought up in the past about how there's a question how these solar panels would be disposed of. I think there is a significant risk that since they don't know how to dispose of them properly, a lot of that would end up in the earth at some point. But I think with the current situation that we have with ag conservation land, that's necessary to incentivize current farmers from buying more land and utilizing it, as well as up and coming farmers for the next generation to want to continue farming. And I think that's an invaluable resource to have lots of farmland in use in Iowa. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'll go quick. My name is Will Doherty, 4299 Northwest Urbandale Drive, Urbandale, Iowa. I work for Mid-American Energy. I've been at a few of these solar hearings and workshop sessions over the past few months. I'll keep it brief. A lot of the comments that we have for the proposed overlay districts ordinance that was in the packet for tonight, you all just accepted into the minutes for tonight's meeting. So I will have, if you have any questions coming out of that as well, I'd be more than happy to, kind of answer why we put some of those comments in there. Overall, I think just kind of after reviewing the ordinance, we do just have some concerns if that is the path that the county wants to go down. Just with some of the regulations within the draft ordinance as it stands right now. It appears that the draft ordinance was pulled largely from Lynn County. Lynn County over the past, prior to when they adopted this, they spent a little over a year in the drafting process with several community volunteers, industry experts. They brought in different government agencies as well, and they're a fairly highly staffed county. The only concern that I really have with it is that that ordinance has not been vetted yet to a full extent. They do have 2 projects there in the county that did get approved through a permit process over by the Dwayne Arnold plant. That was prior to the adoption of this ordinance that they have before them today. That's really my only concern is just, I guess, administratively, how the county plans on keeping up with some of these regulations that are in here. It is definitely one of the most thorough ordinances that I've seen across the state of Iowa, for sure. I'm not saying that, this is an undevelopable ordinance by any means. It's just kind of wanting to have a little bit of dialogue with the county to see how some of these things are going to be enforced, to see what agencies or, what government staff is going to be in charge of either auditing it or reviewing the process and kind of the administrative portions of it as well. But if you do have any questions regarding as you kind of go through your drafting process, reviewing the comments, any other comments here today, from an operational side or a siting side as well, I'd be more than happy to answer any of those questions for you. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Eric Nelson, 1514 Jasper Avenue, Mobile. A couple points to make. I'm kind of bookends on these hearings. I was at the first one and now I'm at this one. And it looks like that the number of participants has doubled from 1 to 2. I think active people that are wanting to build is my understanding. And now there's been a few additional comments, but not from people that are actively wanting to build. And so from where I'm sitting, it looks like to me that the industrial zone that's already been established with a lot of acres is more than inclusive enough for a project or 2 to be built on that property. The other comment I have is that it would look like to me you would set kind of maybe a nasty precedent to not do that when there's only a couple people that are asking to do the project. And so you just think about maybe kicking the door open to other projects that only have 1 or 2 people that are really interested. And obviously there have been hundreds that have shown opposition over time to the same projects. And then thirdly, I think it's kind of ingenious to have someone from the city telling the county what to do. But I'm guessing that if the county tried to tell a city official what to do, that they would probably take offense at that. So I think that where the county authority lies, the county authority lies, and where the city authority lies, the city authority lies. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
This is Tom with NextEra Energy. Can I speak?
Doyle Turner, 2738 200th Street. I think it makes a whole lot of sense at this point to wait for the development plan. This is kind of going away from what our development plan says. And if we're going to do something, it would make a lot more sense from a legal standpoint to deal with it with the development plan first. We're kind of getting the cart ahead of the horse here. The other thing that I'd like to say is people like to talk about tax revenue. You cannot compare property taxes to the taxes off of a solar farm because you're paid based off of what that solar farm produces. Will Doherty had said before that I believe it was 24 to 25% efficient is what the solar is at in this area. the real thing that these things are after is the transmission lines. And we get paid off of what goes through that transmission line. I know I've read articles that Mid-American is actually looking at some nuclear across the state. We would be much better to have something that was a lot more efficient going through those utility transmission lines, paying on a lot more than 24 to 25%. So in order to truly get an apples to apples comparison on this, you can't compare it to farm property tax. You have to compare it to what we could make off those transmission lines if we were using a more efficient source of energy. Thank you.
Doyle? Doyle? You may want to disclose that you're on the Board of Adjustment.
What?
Do you want to disclose that you're on the Board of Adjustment?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, I just thought I'd want to make that public.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, this is Tom Trahern with NextEra.
Hey,
Can you hear me?
We have someone on the phone. And you could phone first.
Yeah.
Okay, phone first,
yes.
please.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
So my name's Tom. Yes, my name's Tom Trahern with NextEra Energy. Just one thing in reading the packet, I wanted to clarify if the recommendation of staff is to proceed with a retention of the current policy, which is to allow solar as a conditional use only in the general industrial district. I'd like to, if that could be clarified at some point. Also, just as it relates to the proposal ordinance that's been identified in the packet, I would agree with what Mr. Doherty said, and that, you know, the overlay zone does provide the opportunity for a project to move forward. The proposal does have a lot of requirements in it that were vetted through a longer process. And I'm not going to repeat everything he said, but I do agree with that. And it's my understanding that even coming out of this public hearing, the recommendation would be how to proceed, and there would be additional time for comments relative to the ordinance. So I'll save my comments relative to a future ordinance for another time. But I guess I would like that clarification, what staff's recommendation is on moving this forward, if I could ask that question. Thank you.
We'll kind of continue with the public hearing, and I'll clarify that at the end for a note, so we can move on to the next.
Okay.
I'm Bob Fritzmeyer, and I'm at 2933 Leach here in Sioux City. And I was authorized by the executive committee of the Northwest Iowa Sierra Club to speak on their behalf also. So actually, there are 5 other members of that with myself, and so I'm speaking for the other 6 of us. One of the most significant benefits of solar, which I'm in favor of, would be to reduce the emissions of the carbon dioxide. And that has been proven to be necessary, you know, for the good and the well-being of our community, Woodbury County, and the wider country too. The carbon dioxide and those kind of dangerous pollutants come from, you know, don't come from solar energy, and by lowering those concentrations, we'd be helping the future generations that are coming and that need our help now in planning for the future. Another aspect of this is that solar energy systems are conservative in the use of water. They don't need the large volumes of cooling water that's needed for the fossil fuels that are currently in use, you know, here in Woodbury County. I think that the board would be well to adopt that overlay system because it would help to conserve those precious water resources. And we know, I mean, just in the last few months, we've had drought conditions, not only here in this part of Iowa, but in other, states around here too. So that would help the situation. And then one of the speakers made a reference to the soil underneath these panels, and those actually would foster with solar panels in there, the grasses that would be allowed to grow there would be, have the rainfall soaking in, absorbing, and really rejuvenating the soil. So that when, 30 years, if in 30 years the solar installation would be retired, then the land could just well be restored then and returned to, the agricultural. Thank you for being here to listen to us.
Thank you.
My name's Alan McGaffin. I live at 1122 South Paxton in Sioux City, and I'm a proponent of solar farms as well. I want to tag on what Bob just said. I think, and this was mentioned earlier, the portability of a solar farm is above and beyond what we think of a power source. You can't pick up a coal-fired plant or a uranium-fired plant and move it. It just doesn't happen. And the same with a wind turbine. A wind turbine can be deconstructed and torn down, raised, and moved, relocated if necessary, but not as easily as a solar panel can. Now, I know an industrial solar farm would be sizable, but nevertheless, as Bob said, if we wish to convert that land in 20 or 30 years, that land is suitable, it's undamaged, and it can be used for other purposes. It's not even been paved over. So I think the portability factor, the water conservation factor, as Bob pointed out, are just, solar panels aren't pretty, but neither are other power sources. We've just got to make a choice of what we can tolerate and what we can't. And I would like to have your board look favorably on solar panels. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Peter Woodman. I live on 1847 Old Highway 141, rural Sergeant Bluff. And I just want to thank you for this opportunity to speak with you a little bit. I think this ties in nicely to what the last two guys said. I want to talk about Virginia a little bit. And the reason I want to talk about Virginia, they're on the cutting edge of solar and where solar could be potentially going. And just as a fact, I'm not for putting large industrial solar complexes on ag land. I think they should be in the industrial. In Virginia, in 2020, the Virginia General Assembly and the governor signed the Virginia Clean Economy Act. And in that act, their largest utilities by 2045 and 2050 need to be carbon neutral. By 2021, in the state, there was more than 2,000 acres a week that were being taken out of ag land and put into solar farms. And there's some more points I want to bring up here too. A lot of the solar developers are courting state and local leaders wanting to put it on ag land. They want to focus on the short-term benefits. Some mention taxes. And they don't want to think about the future ramifications of allowing the industrial power plants on land that is supposed to be reserved for ag use, trading one form of environmental degradation for another. Dr. Ratan Lau, Distinguished Professor of Soil Science at Ohio State University, points out that soil sequesters more than 3 times the amount of carbon locked in all the plants and animals on the earth. Yet construction and maintenance of industrial-sized solar facilities prevent the natural process of soil replenishing from occurring. They're taking out thousands of acres of trees, cropland acres that sequester carbon dioxide. So if carbon dioxide is a problem, some would say, what about the crops that are taking that out? It's ironic in Virginia, to become carbon free in less than 25 years means that there will be a lot more carbon sequestering farmland lost to the Commonwealth. How much? Solar farms require as much as 6 to 8 acres to produce just 1 megawatt of electricity. Up to 104,000 acres of forest and farmland would need to be sheathed in solar panels made of glass and highly toxic metals like lead and cadmium telluride to produce about 13,000 megawatts of electricity. And that's only when the sun's shining. Chinese government is subsidizing solar panels to make them cheaper. They're using dirty coal to make them, and they're using forced labor to produce them. Less than 1% of the solar panels in the United States are made in the US. And over 85% of them are made in China. Something to think about. If you think about it, some of the solar farms that were erected in 2021 in Virginia, they will become hazardous waste sites by 2036. And that's even before the Virginia Clean Economy Act's carbon-free mandate kicks in. Once you deal with the cost of waste, electricity from solar ends up being 4 times higher than they had anticipated. Virginia is on track to lose a massive amount of food growing and carbon sequestering farmland for inefficient and intermittent technology that would quadruple electricity prices and create thousands of acres of toxic waste. Local officials who are thinking about approving special use permits to allow more industrial-sized solar facilities to be built on ag land in their jurisdictions owe it to their constituents to think about all. I also would like to submit these 2 articles here for you guys to read. Can I do it? Thank you.
Can I get a second, please?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, same sign. Oops, sorry. There we go. Okay, anyone else?
Hi, my name's Amber Woodman. I live at 1847 Old Highway 141. And I'm here today to tell you why I oppose changing the current regulations for egg preservation to allow the large scale utility solar on egg land. I studied agricultural engineering at Iowa State University, and I was in the soils and structures department. So this is kind of like my area. I love technology. I really do. But if you look at the things that have been talked about in the meetings, we've been talking about solar panels that fold up, or planting pollinator things under them, or alternative crops. I have Purdue. They are experimenting with this stuff right now. They're trying to get patents. This is not in effect anywhere in the world. Okay, the Iowa State, they're trying to do the alternative crops underneath, and this is the first. They said it is the first of its kind. And they say this is unbiased research. We will report on what we find, and people can decide whether this is a system that is feasible or not. Here we've got, get myself out of order here. But, the cost of the agrivoltaics tend to be higher than traditional solar development due to modified system structures and more complex design and installation. So all these people are talking about this is going to be ag and energy at the same time. It's not there yet. The technology is not there yet. We cannot be making regulations for something that hasn't even been figured out how they're going to do it. They're still engineering it. They're still coming up with it. They're still doing the research. They're building these research facilities, and they're measuring what does happen to the soil when we have these here. What is the carbon? What happens to the carbon? What about these pollinator farms? Do they actually increase the bees, and do they actually help the crops that are on? There's a lot of claims out there, guys, that people are just putting out there that are still being researched. And I just, my engineering mind says, let's not jump the gun here. Let's not get the cart ahead of the horse. Let's not make regulations before we know what they are. One thing that's been mentioned is to, allow them, this is a very specific thing, but like allow them up to 15 feet so that cattle can graze on them. Nowhere do they let cattle graze under these because they damage them. Cattle are too big. That's what they found out. So if we have in our regulation where they can be up to 15 feet high, that's based on something that's not even real yet. And think about a 15-foot high solar panel and think about the winds that we have in Iowa. How much do you think is under the ground to hold it up? I know they like to say that these are movable, but really, what do they think? They're on wheels? They're not. Something has to hold them up, right? Okay, and then just another point. I got in trouble last time I got up here with some of our neighbors who are for it. And I just want to say that my position is not against their personal property rights. Okay, the way I look at this, I am not telling them what they can do with their land. They are not just trying to build a greenhouse or hog confinement on their property. There are large utility companies trying to come into our county and install thousands of acres of industrial solar panels. These large projects will not happen without government subsidies. And just to wind up real quickly, don't be deceived. It's not agriculture. It's not good for the county. Thank you. Oh, and can I submit some documents too?
Thank you. We need a motion to accept. Your second. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Elizabeth Widman, and I live at 1665 220th Street, Rural Sergeant Bluff. And I've been before this committee already. And one of the reasons I came up here is because I want to make a correction on something that I said at one of the meetings. I had looked at a plat map and took the people that spoke at the meeting, and I said there were signed agreements down by me in Sergeant Bluff, which is correct. But then I said there were signed agreements by Rock Branch, and that was not correct because there are not signed agreements right now. So I just want to correct that. There's interest in putting large utility out there, but I just wanted to correct that. And the reason I found that out is because I discovered that in Dan Priestley's office, they have information on all the signed agreements that have been done. And there's 2,230.72 acres that have been signed up in rural Sergeant Bluff by where I live, which is would be a huge utility facility put on agriculture land. And at the last meeting, your work session, you talked about there are unintended consequences to things that you do. And in looking online, one of the things that happens when you change these is lawsuits. You have lawsuits from people who want to put one in and you didn't let them do it with your regulations. You have people that don't want them in that your regulations made. And I think that has to be a consideration because it does cost money for the taxpayers to have legal help to, defend on these lawsuits. And another unintended consequence, you're basically picking and choosing among the farmers. If you let, this is just the start, 2,230 acres go into solar. You have those people that farm, they're going to be looking for new places to farm. And they're going to have an infusion of money from these companies that want to put in solar. And they're going to be looking for new land to rent, new land to buy. And this will be detrimental for small and medium family farmers and new farmers. And so I guess I never stated I'm opposed to putting utility solar on ag preservation land. I think it belongs in the industrial, the way you have it right now. And like I said, it kind of tires me out to hear people say, well, in 30 years, this can be put back into farming. I live out in the country. I love being out in the country. And I said another time, I will be 97 years old if I'm still around before this would be considered put back in ag. So thank you for all you do. And I just ask that you leave industrial solar where it belongs in industrial land.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else? Lose my voice already.
Jesus Sendejas, Salix, Iowa. Just I've been here once before and kind of want to make the same appeal to you guys today. As a lesser magistrates yourselves and those making this decision, as you guys are informing them, it's your duty and this shows it, right? There's been a lot of discussion on how we can make this work with the overlays and all that. But one of the things I would still like for you guys to consider is, you know, some of us live in Morningside, some of us live out in the country. So the ones most affected by this are the people that are gonna be there. I know it's been brought up to you guys, the effects on soil. You know, if there is degradation, you know, topsoil doesn't take a couple of years to restore that. It takes a long time. There's regenerative practices that could be exercised to speed up that process, but it's not gonna be overnight. Scripture talks about leaving an inheritance to our children, which is not just monetary, that's important, but it's also dealing with what we have and making it better. So the idea of again, 20, 30 years, 40 years even, depending on if you extend the use of these solar panels, like it's not going to be the same thing they're working with right now. And so as you consider these things, again, I know if I don't have to look at it, it doesn't bother me because I'm not living there, but there are many who are there. So again, just keep considering that as not just as how you have this project come into being, but the fact that there are people, I mean, most of them are here, a lot of them aren't. But again, there's different interests. You know, I understand if I was approached and I had hundreds, thousands of acres and I said, we'll give you 20 times more than leasing it out, there's a temptation there. I understand that. And again, love my neighbors. That's one of the things I'm called to do. But I just ask that you would please consider that it's not working around it. Again, someone mentioned these are all models and theoretical concepts that have not been proven. And so you cannot alter the life of people who live there based on a theoretical concept or a model that has not been proven to be. Again, you're changing much. And again, whether you're raising crops for feed or for ethanol, whatever it may be, those things that are wasted, they're actually not wasted. A lot of that stuff that comes out of, you know, making ethanol goes to feeding animals, you know, things that we enjoy eating. I like steak, you know, I like all these things. So that stuff's still being used. So it's not just about energy, it's about what are we taking away also, right? You're taking food, you know, and we've seen that. We've looked at the news when, you know, so all of a sudden all these factories of chickens, you know, caught fire or, you know, or things were destroyed. Like we know there's an attack in our food. And again, ultimately, there is a, I'm not saying that my neighbors are being influenced by this, but there is, are you guys familiar with the song Richmond, North of Richmond? If not, you should go listen to it. Well, there is this idea that there are ideologies being pushed, right? And this whole go green, you know, that belching cows are the enemy. That's not true. But there is an agenda that we're facing there, and subsidizing these types of things that the government's paying for would just tell us that it's much greater than how can we better Woodbury County, right? So if you back this up, you're also backing up these ideologies that are not just affecting us here, but other counties are attempting to do the same, and ultimately a country. So consider that as you're making decisions for this. And again, thank you for your time and for listening, hearing us out.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Amy Crow, 2381 Port Mill Road, Sergeant Bluff, Iowa.
I'm not here to say that I'm opposed to solar energy. Solar energy has its place. Solar energy does not have its place on ag preservation ground. My husband's family is a 5th generation farmer. We raise cow calf. We also do row crop in this area. So to say that ag in Woodbury County is on a decline is not true. When you take ground and take it out of its intended use, which in this case, ag use, very rarely does it ever go back into ag use. Planting cover crops underneath solar panels is not ag use. That might be soil conservation purpose, but it is not ag use. I can tell you, we raise cattle and there's no way that we would put cattle underneath of solar panels. Absolutely no way. It's a non-starter. It's not beneficial for the cattle. They're going to get hurt. It's not beneficial for the solar panels to have, 1,500 to 2,000 pound animals running around underneath solar panels. That's actually quite ludicrous to think that anybody would want to do that. I would tell you that once ag ground is gone, you guys are worried about tax revenue and the increased revenue. When ground comes out of tax usage, you're not only affecting the farmer's income, you're affecting the implement dealers, the seed dealers, the fuel producers, the chemicals, the fertilizer companies, everybody that goes into making ag work. You're a detriment to their income. And as far as if I'm correct, the way that the tax revenue comes back to the county is regulated on these solar panels and these solar implementations by the state in a formula that is state controlled. It's not controlled at the county level. So at any given time, the county or the state can choose that regulation to change how much actual revenue comes back to Woodbury County. That's not in our control. That's at the state level. It's no different if some other state government group has some special interest and chooses to take that tax revenue and reappropriate it to another project, special pet project, then Woodbury County is out. When you take ag ground and take it out of its intended purpose, the people that lose is all of us that choose to have food to eat, gas to drive your cars, all sorts of different revenues that would be impacted by taking this and changing this ordinance to allowing this to be on ag ground. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'm not seeing anyone else come up. That's going to be closing the, okay.
Sorry, I had to pass my baby off. Naomi Widman, 1866 220th Street, rural Bronson. My family farms, and we also live right in the area where the proposed, where easements have been signed for these large-scale utility solar farms. And so I am not necessarily opposed to solar. I want to make that clear, but I want to specifically address putting overlays on agricultural protected land. So one thing that was interesting to me, I've been to a meeting before, and then since then have done a little more research on how solar farms affect the surrounding properties and homeowners. So I just wanted to discuss that a little bit. There was a recent large-scale study done in the United States. It was in 2022. And it shows that solar farms, large solar farms, do decrease surrounding home values. The study shows that the decrease is not as significant when you average in coastal areas like California, Connecticut, when solar farms are near large urban areas. So they pooled all of that data. And if you Google it, it'll say, it doesn't decrease it that much. It's only slight. But when you look at the specific data for rural areas in the Midwest from this study, where agricultural land was converted into solar farms, the decrease in residential property values is incredibly significant. There was a 4 to 5% decrease in values. So if you own a $400,000 acreage out in the country, your value could decrease by almost $20,000. And this decrease in value was noted for homes within a half mile of the solar farms. It wasn't until you got over 2 miles away that there was no effect seen. And because of this potentially damaging effect, it's crucial that Woodbury County develop solar energy strategically so as to have minimal impact on the surrounding homeowners and residents. So I would encourage you guys to not grant overlays on ag protected land, particularly when it's benefiting a few select individuals. And I think we're all aware of that. The easements that have been signed or are by a very small, maybe 2 or 3, forgive me if I'm wrong, if it's 4, people in our area. It's a very small amount. So to affect all of the surrounding homeowners and acreage owners just to benefit financially these couple of individuals or families, I think it is not fair. I don't think it's strategic development of solar utilities in our county. So if the county feels it is in the best interest of the general public to bring solar energy in and develop that, I think it needs to be strategically developed and not just hand-picked out areas in the middle of ag land and grant overlays to these people because they requested them. I don't personally think that makes sense. We have a 20-year development plan that's going to be finished this spring. If I would encourage you guys to wait until that's been finished and then we can visit it in the next development plan and see what would be best for the county and the general public.
Mrs. Widman, your time is up. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'll go. I'm Christopher Widman, 1866, 220th Street, Bronson, Iowa, 51007. I'm a 5th generation farmer. I love living in the country and I have boys that, Lord willing, I'll put my farm onto later when they grow up and whatnot. And I love the ag preservation land, and I stand up here saying I don't think that solar utility has a place in ag preservation land. I think one thing that's kind of stuck out to me is that there's 2 different kinds of people in the county. There's the people that live in the cities and they're getting their power from Mid-American Energy. There's the other citizens in the county that they're connected to REC. And the reality is I haven't heard anything about what REC is talking about this, whether REC wants it or not. Some people have gotten up here and said, this is going to save residents money. But the reality is, if they hook into Mid-American, Mid-American already has 2 power plants in the county and they already have cheap electric. If they don't hook into REC, basically what we're going to do is the REC residents, they're not going to save any money because they're not getting power from it. And so I think that we just don't need it in ag land, because the reality is REC is getting their power from NIPCO, and NIPCO needs to say whether they want this or not. And that the only thing that's really going to go down for these individuals are their property values and not their power bills. And it's not beneficial for the people out in the county to do this. The other thing I would like to also point out is the people that have come to these meetings in the past, that the people speaking in for this are the people that have signed contracts. That's the reality of it. The last 2 meetings, on the 27th, there was 13 people that got up and spoke. 6 of them were in favor. One said they liked solar, but didn't say anything about ag preservation land. One said they were for it, but they lived in Monona County. There were 2 representatives from energy companies, and there were 2 landowners. And those landowners have signed contracts that I have right here that are public information. Then the next meeting came on January 17th. Those 2 same landowners showed up for it. And here's their signed contracts again. And the reality is, the public isn't really for this. We don't have a lot of people showing up saying, we want utility solar and ag preservation land. The reality is, we have these few residents that have signed contracts and they want to make big out of it. I think we need to tell them we have a 20-year zoning plan.
let's stick to it. They need to sell their ag land and go buy industrial land. And if they love solar so much, then they need to do that. And I'm sure that these individuals are going to come back up here after me tonight, and they're going to tell you how great it is for the county. But I would like to submit this to the record. These are public informations, signed easement contracts with names of who has these easements signed. I'd like to submit this to the record.
Motion to accept. We got a motion. I need a second.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye. Anyone else?
Good afternoon. I'm Tom Yoakum, 422 Huntington Drive, Sergeant Bluff, Iowa. And, you've got a big decision. There's a lot of pros and a lot of cons to this. I'm for it. Okay, as at the September 26th Board of Supervisors meeting, Supervisor Taylor and Nelson revisited considering allowing utility scale solar and discussed the two different options were explored. The discussion began with the possibility of reclassifying certain farmland to light industrial, which could basically take land out of agricultural preservation. Mr. Priestley introduced the concept of renewable energy overlay, which he stated would be situational and on a case-by-case basis. Mr. Priestley also stated that this would allow for the preservation of farmland while still allowing for solar. While the supervisor's consideration for the light industrial could be applied, I think the overlay concept would be more appropriate, especially at a time when research at our land-grant universities are studying the possibility of certain agricultural practices within the solar arrays. Additionally, when the solar lease expires, the land in the overlay will revert back to agricultural production. In reality, this is very similar to the 10, 15, or 30-year CRP contracts that the Farm Services Agency offers, which is that when the CRP lease expires, the farmland can go back into agricultural production, the same as when the solar lease expires. According to the map that was published in the packet, there are about 330 acres that are in the CRP program and are already out of production. So I do support adopting the renewable energy overlay for the AP zone, as it will also allow for the land to return to production. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Are we at a point where we're ready to close the public hearing? Okay.
Greg Yoakum, 1629 270th Street. I'm in favor of the overlay on ag preservation. Main reason, once if it is zoned industrial or anything else, it cannot go back into agricultural production. Everything else can be, it can be changed if it stays ag preservation with an overlay. I think that would be the optimum for the county. I am a farmer. I have, as you probably will be looking at, those leases. I have a signed lease. It doesn't say it's going to go in. It still has to go through many, many steps of approval before it can get approved. This is just a first step in the process. I guess there is power lines, transmission lines that go through my property two ways. It goes through all the properties. That's what they look at. And, with Mid-America looking at their being here in support of it, with the two power plants that they have. And eventually they'll be shutting one of them down for sure. There is going to be a need for power, and I see as a great benefit for the county to have this. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm Elizabeth Sendejas from Salix, Iowa. And I just want to read an article here by Robert Bryce. You can find it on Forbes' website. It's called Build It and They Won't Come. An Iowa farmer explains backlash against big solar. It explains some of the concerns that I have about big solar farming. In this article, we hear from Jessica Peterson, a sixth-generation farmer from Benton County, Iowa. She talks about her family fight against solar project being pushed by Chicago-based Invenergy. She says the land that this project is proposed on is in the top 10 to 15% of farmland in the state of Iowa and is recognized as nationally significant, which the state of Iowa possesses a large amount of when it comes to nationally significant and prime agricultural land. They are projecting this to be the largest utility-scale solar project in the state, as well as the largest battery storage facility in the state of Iowa. This project will most likely set a precedent for the entire state of Iowa when it comes to utility-scale solar. There is strong opposition to this project from the community for a large number of reasons. There are people who have concerns about property value losses, lack of mindfulness when it comes to siting of the plant and the productivity of the soil they are siting solar panels on, choking out small town growth, wildlife concerns, taking away land from farmers who rent land for their livelihoods of farming, drainage issues with tile damage, lack of fire and disaster recovery plans, lack of proper setbacks from people's properties. The county requires minimum of 50 feet from a property line. The mental health component with the construction phase, and those who live amongst the project, hurting small businesses and towns and so on. Homes in and around the small towns are already not selling as quickly as they once were due to the possibility of this project coming to fruition. Renewable promoters claim that industrial scale solar will not hurt property values or the growth of the towns it will impact, but we are already seeing the repercussions of it even before the project has been started. People in the area are truly living through a nightmare, knowing that this may be the largest solar plant project in our beautiful state of Iowa. There are some that are finding out that they have the possibility of being surrounded by solar panels on 2, 3, if not all 4 sides of their properties. We do see this as a community statewide and nationwide crisis. The World Bank reports that the U.S. has 18% arable land to grow crops on. Our productive soil is Iowa's biggest asset and our most important natural resource that we have in this state. And to see industrial scale solar proposed on such rich soil is incredibly heartbreaking and irresponsible. They propose that the land will be farmable once the project is decommissioned in 35 to 50 years, but there is no proof of that, as there is not a solar project that has been decommissioned from productive farmland after that long. We also do not believe that industrial scale solar projects belong where people live and surrounding communities that want to grow and prosper. We are fighting for much more than that. We are fighting for the potential of the future of farming in Lynn County and in our state, the ability for our community to live in symbiosis with each other again, the growth of small town Iowa, the businesses that want to stay successful in small communities, the mental and physical health and safety of the people who live here and their overall well-being, the access of affordable energy to consumers, and so much more.
Elizabeth.
Thank you. Those are some concerns that community had, and I believe there are some that we have as well.
Thank you. Else. Are we ready to close the public hearing?
in Johnston, Salix, Iowa. Someone made a reference to CRP land. CRP land does not have millions of ugly solar panels that need to be disposed of when the years out of production are up. And may I also remind the panel and the people here that the solar panels are made by women and children who are physically and sexually molested in the Chinese communist land of China.
Thank you. Anyone else? We're ready to close the public hearing. Going once, going twice.
Hi, I'm Sherry Zener Keipel. I live at 811 Cottonwood Trail in Sergeant Bluff. My parents farm south of Mobile and really wanted to be here tonight, but could not. So I would just like to reiterate all of the things that from that Forbes article, fully agree with that. And I would just like to say that just because you call it a solar farm doesn't mean that it has any, like calling it a farm is crazy because you can't, and saying that it can go back into ag use after 30 or so years doesn't mean you can wave a magic wand and then all of the damage that's been done or all of the things that have been introduced into that farmland, that those will just go away. That will still be there, right? It doesn't just go away. And it's not really a fair comparison, as she had just stated too, to compare it to CRP and say, oh, you can have CRP ground and it, you know, after its lifespan, it goes back into ag ground. It's natural things that are in the ground, as I understand. My dad farms and I'm not fully into farming as much as he probably wished that I would have been, but I do get that. And I think that comparison to say that a solar farm can be converted back into ag use after that time, it's not a comparison to CRP at all, because you can't just wave a magic wand and have all that damage undone. So I think all of the things that have been stated about small town life and all the things that make our state and our county so rich, you know, this is all about integrity and it's about the legacy we want to leave for our kids. And is that really worth, is it really worth it? I guess would be something to consider. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Going once, going twice. Going 3 times. I think we need a motion to go out of the public hearing.
I will make a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay, I have a motion. Can I get a second?
Yes.
That's it, Dawn. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, we are now out of the public hearing, which means, commissioners, we get to chat. Anyone have any comments, questions, thoughts they'd like to share?
I guess. Question for Dan. Last at the work session, it was brought up about the overlay district And that changes the two boards that review the application from zoning and board of adjustment under a conditional use. It would then become zoning board with the recommendation to the supervisors under the overlay district. And it would be more of a set of parameters that are to be followed in the guidelines under the overlay plan. Is that correct?
That would be correct. Any rezone procedure entails the zoning commission and the board of supervisors by ordinance. So looking at some of the other jurisdictions, that's kind of a traditional approach where this being the zoning commission is a recommendation body, and ultimately the commission would make that recommendation to them to decide whether or not an overlay would be appropriate or not for the particular area. Any passage of an overlay is not a county-wide overlay, it's project specific, and I want to be clear on that as well.
What were your thoughts on that, Tom?
I guess the biggest thing that I've talked about from the beginning on this process, I like the fact of the conditional use permit because the two bodies that review that permit are required to live in the unincorporated area. The zoning board and board of adjustment that was passed in 2020. So the reason I like the conditional use permit is because the fact that those are people that are living next to you. They have to be by law. They can't live in the city. And I'm not speaking against the supervisors at all. That changes, they could have 5 members from, incorporated area on that board at a given time. So I like the fact that the two boards under the conditional use permit are your neighbors. They're the ones living next to the solar or whatever's going in. So I guess that's the main point I would like to make, that I've liked the conditional use permit from the beginning. I do understand that the general industrial area may not contain the acres necessary for some of these projects. To date, the zoning administrator has not received applications or inquiries from companies looking to do this. I'm aware that there is interest, but I don't know, I guess. And regarding the letter we received from Bob Scott from the city, if there was a 2-mile setback around the city limits, that would take away a large portion of that general industrial area that is available for development with solar, commercial scale solar. So I guess that's kind of my comments on.
I think one of the other things that we thought was interesting on the overlay district too is that it wasn't just 2 boards initially involved, it was the supervisors as well. So that's like 3 sets of eyes that give you the opportunity to speak to 3 groups of people that represent you. We found out last meeting that that isn't the case. It is basically 2 boards. And that kind of changed the perspective a little bit on that too.
May I make a comment?
Absolutely.
The question was, I believe it was from Tom Treharn over the phone there about what staff has kind of come up with. And I want to kind of remind everybody that the original direction that came from the Board of Supervisors asked the zoning commission to look into this scope as far as the conditional use permit. Last summer, this debate really started under a 2-pronged debate, and that 2-pronged debate entailed utility solar and personal accessory solar for your house. And what happened during the course of that debate is it was determined, and the zoning commission at the time they've been very consistent on talking about the conditional use as an important aspect of scrutinizing an area of the county in terms of whether it's appropriate or not for a particular use. And as staff had stated in the report, there's a lot of significant uses that are out on agricultural preservation land that may not necessarily entail agriculture, but significant activities that folks may petition the zoning commission for and the Board of Adjustment for consideration. However, the distinguishing factor across the board on all of those uses versus utility solar is the level and amount of acres that could be employed in terms of these projects. And so when that was delivered to the commission to look at this as far as the zoning commission, the supervisors are very well aware of how our ordinance is designed as far as the matrix of the conditional use permit format, et cetera. And in the directions that they gave us twice, the second one kind of modified, they asked us to look specifically at the conditional use permit process. They played a strong emphasis on the importance of communicating with the neighbors, the stakeholders, looking at factors such as land and soil, looking at slope, looking at the corn suitability rating. They even had us look at percentage of industrial land converting over to industrial land, possible acre caps on these aspects. And so we kind of run into several things. Right away, we learned since September 11th, we look at the calendar there, some significant time has passed by. The reason significant time has passed by is this is a consequential debate that definitely affects the landowners in one way or the another from Woodbury County. And so looking at it through I would have to say a concrete lit review on what's kind of going around in the country, we've learned a lot. Of course, there's federal initiatives out there promoting further access to renewable energies. That's quite obvious. That's been presented in there, which of course creates initiative for wanting to look at these projects and going into the respective local communities. And so anytime you look at land use or zoning, I like to use the analogy of the health of a system, or even kind of healthcare analogies, and kind of referencing the law of unintended consequences. Usually when you look at the system, when you adjust something, does the overall system react to something? And when you're looking at land use and the placement, we're very used to doing that, of course, with the conditional use permit process. So how do you marry those items together to find something that is appropriate? I know the commission does well through the years on scrutinizing projects within respective neighborhoods, looking at criteria, collecting information from the public. And so this multi-month process has, in a sense, been a super conditional use in the sense of trying to collect as much facts as possible from the public. And one of the things that you look at in terms of zoning is, of course, location. That's very key. To have a zone, you need to know the lines of demarcation where these areas of zones are. And typically, county zoning, as backed in Iowa code, is backed up through a general development plan, which leads to criteria for an ordinance. In other words, areas where you can hang your hat on in terms of deciding what the future is of the county. And when you look at kind of the health of the system, the zoning commission did very well in the very beginning with their original recommendation to look at the conditional use as a criteria, because the conditional use fits with the system. It's something that is built within, that it's sort of a normal protocol, a normal process. Where the system gets thrown off is when you're, instead of looking at maybe 2, 3, 4 parcels or multi-acre situations, then you're left with, how does a new policy affect or fit in with the tradition and the criteria that is placed in there? And so 2005, Woodbury County came up with a development plan that development plan led to a 2008 ordinance. And yes, there is acknowledgement in the 2008 ordinance for renewable energy, of course. And so the community at the time, when the 2008 ordinance was being discussed, going through the process line by line by the commission and ultimately adopted by the supervisors, the community came to a conclusion that electrical energy generation was designated for the general industrial zoning district at that time. So that was kind of the voice of the community at that time. And leading up to this juncture, of course, technology's changed. Absolutely. It's more than reasonable to understand the conditions of the system, how they are interacting with us all, because we're a system of looking at inputs and how do we adjust to those inputs and react to the realities on the ground. And typically, one of the areas that you look at is development plans, and that's why it's good practice to maybe use a 20-year time frame to kind of slow down and look at what's going on in society to make major adjustments. And as you'll see, the second item tonight on the list for public hearings is kind of a introduction to further talk about the Woodbury County Comprehensive Plan, which has been through development. There's been plenty of challenges, of course, through the COVID situation. And we've held public hearings. We've had different opportunities to collect information. And through the course of that, we probably, I would say, haven't had a whole lot of input as far as a demand, as far as a major change to solar policy. And without major development plan aspects, it can definitely make the discourse or the debate much more challenging. And so you run into the core in terms of zoning 101, when you're looking at introducing a concept major, it's kind of either recommend to retool a development plan or even in fact amend a development plan midship. It's probably not the best practice to amend a development plan to go chase a respective policy. But with that said, what staff has encountered, and I know what the commissioners have encountered, is how do you lay it out and look at it all as far as what's going on out there with the practitioners and the academic community, but also very importantly, what are the conditions on the ground within the respective neighborhoods of all the respective landowners. And so we go back to looking at what is that comprehensive plan? What is that map? And as of this date, our mapping looks very similar to what it did in 2005. It's if you're going to have the elevator speech with someone, how is Woodbury County designed? It's pretty safe to say the industrial areas are south of the airport, west of Interstate 29, and then the agricultural areas, of course, are dispersed throughout much of the mainland of Woodbury County. Now, with that said, we run into the debate on looking at, wow, there's a significant, numerous amount of acres that are available as agricultural preservation. It leads us to looking at, we originally started with the conditional use permit and we started looking at the overlay district. And the reason you look at the overlay district is, of course, it's one of those options out there as far as what we would call a super conditional use. I kind of use that term because it takes the Board of Adjustment out. It brings the zoning commission into the picture. And if you're going to go the overlay route, you got to go back and look at, again, the comprehensive plan. There's a couple ways to look at it. If you do an overlay, do you consider areas on the ag land where it could be possible? Well, then you have to talk about things of where you can put the goalposts up. Is it corn suitability rating? Is it slope? Is it other criteria? We've looked at, I know Lynn County was mentioned tonight a few times. Lynn County and Scott County are the ones that have some type of overlay district. And looking at it across the board with many of the counties that we've looked at, there's not one size fits all solution to how you permit these utility scale. And so we've seen a mix through the report as enumerated in there. Some counties use a conditional use permit. So they are having their zoning commission, their Board of Adjustment looking at it. Some of the smaller counties may very well have their Board of Supervisors permit it. but it really kind of depends on the localized situation of the unique county in terms of how they want to handle their respective permitting. Looking at, I know the supervisors made a reference to limited industrial one time in the direction, and the limited industrial, if you look at the law of unintended consequences again, you look at the map of Woodbury County now, and hypothetically, if someone wants to go ahead and submit an application to the zoning commission and say, yeah, we would like to have consideration for, let's just say, a general industrial zoning district to switch agricultural preservation over to general industrial for the purpose of facilitating utility solar. What you run into is a scenario where you run into spot zoning possibly, where the area is surrounded by agricultural land, regardless if you're doing 50 acres or you're doing 1,000 acres, you can be construed as spot zoning. And so what you run into in our criteria with the conditional uses, the zoning commission has to very carefully scrutinize the neighborhood. That area is right in there in the criteria. And that leads to what spot zoning is. Spot zoning is simply listed as a definition in the Woodbury County zoning ordinance, but it can definitely be amplified. So hypothetically, if they were to get an application and staff, as we receive the application, identifies, we would talk with the applicant and say, hey, you might have an issue here because this ground is surrounded here, and spot zoning is a criteria that may not fit. Then we run over to the development plan map and we look and we see, okay, is there any justification for flipping the district over? If that map follows that green chartered AP district, then it's very likely, I can't speak for the commission, but it would be very tough to recommend over to the Board of Supervisors to flip the district based upon the criteria. So we run into that kind of situation here is our rezone process now doesn't get you to the possibility of having the project in that regard unless the development plan backs it up. And so the question is, if you do an overlay scenario, the overlay helps kind of create a pathway because the traditional rezoning does not work to create a set of unique aspects that could possibly be agreed upon. And the key difference between Lynn County and Scott County is Scott County rests upon CSR as their figure, the Corn Suitability Rating 2. And when you're looking at that, that's the assessment measure for agricultural land, deciding whether or not that land is in an outstanding aspect, it should remain farming because of the soil quality, versus going out and finding an area of land that is in a very low CSR level that, hey, maybe solar would be appropriate for that. Scott County hangs their hat on that aspect, while Lynn County has a rubric or kind of a scorecard that looks more so at agricultural mitigation, introducing the agricultural voltaics into the issue at hand. So they have a criteria that looks at that through the rezoning process. And yes, I think it was referenced out in, I think by Will of Mid-American, when you introduce more aspects to that, you do possibly create more bureaucracy or scenarios where how do you enforce that? How do you calculate that? Because the Lynn County, and of course this proposal kind of maps that out a bit too, where you're talking about species of grass and various other things that are quite specific. And so the question comes, how do you kind of zero in and have that be enforceable? So what staff sees is this large scale system, and how do you drop that on a picture of a system that is already designed in a way that doesn't create a law of unintended consequences. And the way in zoning you try to avoid law of unintended consequences is you go back to the development plan and you kind of assess generally what the public wants before you move to the advancement or major changes to an ordinance. A lot of times development plans, as you know, in 2008 lead to brand new ordinances that can look at the scope of various changes that have existed. So there's been a reason that staff has laid out these multiple options as possible routes to come to a conclusion. And as I kind of referenced very quickly in the very beginning of the meeting, option number one is to have a conditional use permit that focuses in on directly the general industrial land and allows the zoning commission and the Board of Adjustment to continue the permitting, but it enforces the aspect of working with the Board of Supervisors to ensure that agreements are put into place, such as the road use agreements or the decommissioning, having bonding scenarios, special agreements with the companies. That's out there because that's part of the existing system, how the system has functioned. And I want to be very clear, there's definitely been comments about supporting or not supporting solar, and we fully respect that, absolutely, because we need the information as possible. But I need to be very clear that Woodbury County already does have a pathway to get to utility solar. It's just in the general industrial district. And I think that can kind of get lost a lot when we're kind of going back and looking at the different aspects of it. The second part that staff brings up is, of course, the overlay district. Yes, it is possible to proceed with an overlay district if we have a set of criteria that we feel is suitable to deciding whether or not the location is appropriate or not. And so if the corn suitability rating 2 is something that the commission and the public would want to look at as a measure of the goalpost on whether maybe a certain amount of ag land could be considered, well, that's the route that you would take if there is some land out there available. The other aspect is the development plan. If we were to look at the adoption of the new development plan, there's some language in the draft proposals that put a nod to energy, renewable energies, but it's very clear about the challenges that we have seen in this county over the last several years. We know that there's been a significant debate on other types of renewable energies, such as the wind debate, and there is language in this draft about just a little bit of what has happened and transpired during that time period. And so kind of with that said, each of those criteria, staff, and of course from the zoning 101 that we've all been through at different points, development plans and future land use maps are very important to have as part of the discussion when you have issues of this magnitude that are so consequential for the future of the county. So with that said, that's the three-prong approach that staff sees as a possible pathway. If there's no major change as far as the overlay, staff would definitely suggest at least the modification of the conditional use permit process for industrial areas so that we have further information there as far as the future permitting on industrial land. But again, it's a complicated issue. It's obvious that it is. I think that we continue to learn, we continue to listen. The lit review that we look at, we see that a lot of these articles that are out there are 2022 articles, 2021. When we see that the articles are that fresh and that new, that's an automatic indicator that the industry is in an ever-changing realm of how technology is. So we need to be cognizant of that. And that's basically the staff perspective.
One of the things that I've noticed in all the research, of course, there's a lot of things that really stand out in my mind, but there's only, I think, 14 counties that have any kind of solar utility scale ordinances that they've been working on. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I've found, at least our research.
Yeah, that's the ones that I was able to find.
Right. Okay. So to me, that means this is pretty new information. This is kind of new grounds. We're just kind of working through it right now. So there's a lot of people that comment that this is relatively new and we have a lot to learn yet. And that's still my opinion. We have a lot to learn yet as far as what the ordinance are, what they will be and how they'll be applied and how effective they actually will be. So going cautiously forward. That's kind of my perspective.
I guess one thing I'd like to bring up too is the future land use map back in 2005, which is now our current land use map. The new one that's being proposed for the 2040 plan is virtually the same, hasn't changed. They haven't added anything. I guess I don't see anything that's really changed. So part of what I'm getting at is to look out 20 years, what's going to be the case, what's going to be happening. Well, 20 years ago when we had our plan adopted, we thought we were guessing pretty good, and it must have been fairly accurate because the new plan doesn't change that map at all. But I guess all I'm looking at is I think there's going to be a need to somehow allow for solar. It might just be community solar around small towns. You know, I don't know what it's going to be, and I can't predict that. I think eventually there'll probably be some solar that isn't going to be just in an industrial area south of Sioux City, especially if half of that's gone by setbacks that are imposed. But to sit and guess where it's going to be and how it's going to happen, I can't do that. The only, the overlay district kind of does some of that, but I don't like the fact that that takes away the decision from a board that's county residents and puts it in the hands of the supervisors instead. And I'm not, like I said, speaking against the supervisors at all, but I do know with the law the way it is, the Board of Adjustment and Zoning Board are going to be people that are going to live in the county in the rural area, not in the incorporated areas, unless that law changes. So that's all. I guess I'll end on that.
This has been a long process and a lot of people have been brave and spoke, and we've learned a lot. I'm just like Tom, it's hard to predict what will happen. I thought Ms. Woodman did a good job presenting some stuff, and you talk about how it's 2021, 22, it's new information. I served over a decade on the Board of Adjustments, and I trust that process. And that's kind of where I'm at right now is that first option is kind of where I'm at with Board of Adjustment, and keeping it with, like you say, rural residents. Is that the term you used?
Yep.
Yeah. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, I do appreciate everyone coming in and sharing. I'm also in favor of keeping it as is in our first option here. We do have a lot to learn, and we need to move forward with it very definitely. But I'd like to continue to utilize the conditional use permit where possible. And it was brought up that the comprehensive plan is just being developed, and I really do believe we need to follow along with that and make sure that we are compatible with the comprehensive plan.
Thank you all for attending. This is, I guess in full disclosure, my first meeting on this commission. I was just appointed by the Board of Supervisors late December. I did attend the workshop back on January 17th, which was just last week. I know a few of you attended that meeting as well, not all of you. So again, I appreciate you all providing your public comment this evening. As far as my take on this, again, I'm coming in late in this discussion. As being my first meeting and only one workshop last week. I am not in favor of only allowing this in industrial areas. There was one comment made that there is an impact to the agricultural districts as far as affecting the implements, affecting the seed dealers, affecting the fertilizer producers. Those are the same people that also build in the industrial areas that need that industrial zone property to expand their businesses, to provide the services to support the farming community. before coming into this meeting, I was under the impression that the overlay district may be the best option. Upon hearing from all of you, I think that is still an option, but where I'm leaning at is that the development plan modification needs to happen first before I'm comfortable determining if the industrial area or the overlay district is the most acceptable path to take. As the comment's been stated, the existing land use map and the future land use map, which will be discussed under the next agenda item, is relatively or exactly the same as it was back in 2005. And I have a concern with that. If we were to look at the overlay district as the use of these large scale solar farms is what they're referred to, does change the environment for the future land use map. And I don't think that's reflected on that future land use map. And so although I'm tending to lean towards the overlay, I need some additional time and discussions with the development plan to identify where those overlay districts should be with all your involvement and other meetings moving forward. So that's my current take on the situation tonight.
I think I just want to point out to everybody how much work has actually gone into the information for the new comprehensive plan. It's 2 years, 3 years, 2 or 3, something like that. How many public meetings? Yes, yes, let's do that. I might be jumping ahead and kind of crossing lines here, but
I'm Erin Berzina. I'm with Simcoe. Simcoe address is 6401 Gordon Drive. I'm
Corinne Erickson. I'm also with Simcoe, 6401 Gordon Drive.
Okay, so yes, we've been going for 2.5 years. And then what was your question? I apologize.
how many public meetings
Well,
and
thank you.
participation from the community?
Okay, we started out, like a lot of comprehensive plans do, we started out with a public survey. We ran that, and probably our most successful public outreach was with the Woodbury County Fair. We probably gathered somewhere around 450 survey responses at that point. So we took all of that public input information, started developing, taking the important points out of that, developing our goals and objectives. And from there, we had our draft, and we went out and did 4 public open houses all around the county. So we did Hornick, Anthon, Moville, and Sergeant Bluff. So I will be honest, we did not have great turnout at those. Tried to publicize it as best we could. And then we've just been accepting public comments as they've come along. We did take a kind of a break in our process for a couple of different reasons along the way. But that's kind of the extent of our public outreach at this point.
Okay. I just want to make a point that there was public participation, and this has been a very long process. And we've had this draft for a week, 2 weeks, something like that. So we've had the opportunity to look at it. And so Tom might have mentioned that I'm not real surprised that we did a good job the first time. I like to
Somebody
say.
did, not
Okay,
me.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to point you out. But I think, yeah, we did a good job this time as well. So I'm confident in the decision that we make based on that information, and I appreciate what you've done.
Thank you.
And we'll have you back in just a few minutes. Thank you. Any other comments from the commissioners?
I guess one thing I would like to say, and I've seen a lot of it with the wind turbine debate and now the solar. The people you live next to, they're your neighbors, and hopefully this doesn't destroy friendships or connections between people that have been there for years. I've seen some of that happen with the wind turbines, and I just hate to see that because I've seen people that have known each other for 30 years and they don't talk anymore. I know it's easy to say, don't let that happen, but I felt I needed to say that. Thank you.
So commissioners, based on the information that we've had, the public participation, all the research that's been provided, the research we've done ourselves, are we to a place where we're ready to make a motion on this item?
And then again, I hesitate, but the conditional use in AP was what I had first talked about. Not saying that that's not something that may have to happen down the road, but at this point, if I were to make a motion, it'd be a recommendation of the approval of the conditional use permit for industrial areas only. I don't think we're ready to make the change above that without some further thought and information. So that would be my motion to approve the conditional use permit for industrial areas only and strengthen that with some other conditions.
All right, we have a motion. Do we need to go into what's
Sorry, should close.
What's that?
Yeah, I guess I'll add that to my motion that it be sent back to the zoning commission prior to being officially approved and opportunity for the county attorney to review.
Okay, so for clarification, if I may, your motion entails a conditional use permit in the general industrial, and you're conditioning staff and county attorney's office to go through it?
Yeah.
Okay, and then bring it back for another public hearing? Okay.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I will second that.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries 4-1.
4-1.
4-1.
Can I make a statement quick, Chris?
Yes.
I would just make the statement that I don't disagree that they should be allowed in industrial zone properties. I also think they can be allowed in other zoning districts with further analysis. And again, I apologize. It was not a negative that this group has not done all the work. And so I apologize if it came off that way. You have done all the work. It's just myself. I've come into this late. And that's at none of your fault. And for me to be comfortable to continue to look at this, I also need to look at the development plan and the modifications that may be warranted as these discussions continue forward with staff and with the county attorney's office. So again, I'm not against allowing them in industrial areas. I just think there's other opportunities to allow them elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I believe that concludes item number 5, zoning commission public hearing for proposed utility scale solar energy systems. And we move on to
One point of one
yes.
last point of clarification.
Okay.
So your motion in the passage reflects pretty much that that first option of the section 5.08, the utility conditional use. I'm just making that for clarification, because we'll bring a form of that back at the next public hearing.
Yes. Industrial general.
Okay.
General industrial.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, are we ready to move on to the next one? Okay, so the next item on the agenda then is the zoning commission public hearing for proposed Woodbury County Comprehensive Plan 2040 summary. Dan, do you want to read that information into the record?
Okay. Basically, tonight, of course, as it was referenced earlier, this has been a intricate, long process for the adoption of the a comprehensive plan. The goal of the comprehensive plan is to have a set of priorities for the county over the next 20 years or so. And this process will ultimately involve a public hearing at the zoning commission level and up to 3 public hearings at the board of supervisors level before they ultimately decide on what the future direction is for much of county policy beyond zoning. Of course, the zoning and the solar regulations are the most predominantly discussed with us, but there's other county departments and interests across the board that have a compelling interest in the comprehensive plan. So as our agenda says, the purpose of the plan is to provide an inventory of community services and resources and a thoughtful statement of the county's vision for the future. And so I would probably at this time recommend Aaron and Fran
We
to
have
possibly present.
our Simcoe representatives. You're back up.
Okay, thank you, everyone, for having us speak about this, and also for everyone who attended, residents of the county and interested parties for hanging with us here. We are actually going to have a fairly short kind of presentation tonight, because I know that you have heard, except for Jeff, well, we can go over this a different time if you'd like. You have heard this presentation before about the goals and the objectives. So we're kind of going to do a shortened version. And I do want to note for those who are in the audience, I know you guys have this. We have a pretty short summary of kind of what a comprehensive plan is and the goals and objectives. They are up on this front table. So if you would like to grab one and review at your leisure, you can. But first, we kind of want to start with again, what a comprehensive plan is and what it's not. I'm going to kind of speak broadly here, but a comprehensive plan is a vision for the future. It is not necessarily a policy document. We've been talking a lot about policy up until this point, but it can certainly encompass what that policy may work toward in the future. Comprehensive plan is very flexible, not quite as specific in scope as a zoning ordinance or a municipal code. We do have in that document, the vision statement is rather long, but I feel that it encompasses everything from the rural character and strong sense of community that this county strives to have, and also touches on the diverse agricultural based economy, welcoming new enterprises, supporting current businesses, and then maintaining stewardship of natural resources, and quality and affordable standard of living. A little bit on the plan timeline and what we've done so far. We had, again, like we kind of discussed, it was a long process. We did have 5 steering committee meetings, comprised of different members from county departments and kind of those who are out and about in the community. 3 of those steering committee meetings, we really picked apart the goals and objectives. They were very active steering committee in their input and shaping this information. So I guess we'll start going.
Yeah.
You start going.
So we did want to give kind of at least just touch on all of the goals and sort of explain those for each of the chapters to just describe the breadth of all the subject areas that the plan covers. So the first chapter is housing. So the goals here, we have improved the condition of existing housing stock to ensure homes are safe, efficient, and resilient. And this includes strategies like providing resources on rehabbing and maintaining homes, especially when it comes to immediate safety concerns. Increase the variety of housing options to maximize affordability and availability for residents of all income levels. So this includes allowing the construction of accessory dwelling units and encouraging development of diverse, affordable housing. Preserve the rural character of the county. Objectives here include limiting density, locating new development close to populated areas, and protecting ag land in natural areas. expand access to safe, high-quality housing for all residents, direct funding toward affordable housing options, as well as emergency shelters and resources for homeless populations. And lastly, assist residents in the path from becoming or from renting to becoming homeowners. So connecting residents with information and resources to help in purchasing homes. The second chapter, we have economic development. Coordinate economic development initiatives with regional priorities, maintain core industries that are the backbone of the economy by marketing Siouxland as a regional center for food production and related agricultural industries. So this is about connecting industry leaders with educational institutions to make sure that students have training and relevant skills before entering the workforce, and promoting the region as a beneficial market for industries to locate. Encourage the diversification of the county's economy in support of small businesses, as well as larger enterprises. Work to enhance the county's quality of life to draw and retain families, employees, and residents of all ages in the region. So that's about investing in recreational, cultural assets and improving broadband infrastructure. Ensure that educational and economic opportunities are accessible to all residents, regardless of race, age, sex, religion, or ability. So just facilitating access to educational and job resources for residents from underrepresented populations. And then lastly, encourage healthy lifestyles to maximize residents' quality of life. Then we have the transportation chapter. So prioritize user safety across all transportation modes in the county. Ensure equitable access to the transportation system for all residents, especially with the promotion of the Siouxland Regional Transit System, and develop infrastructure for alternative modes of transportation. Mitigate the environmental impacts of transportation projects while seeking opportunities for long-term transportation sustainability investments. So consider federal funding for electric vehicle infrastructure, preserve features along the Les Hills Scenic Byway, partner with environmental agencies to aid in transportation decisions, and work with Siouxland Regional Transit to increase ridership. Expand the network of multi-use trails in the county. And then lastly, maintain the quality and efficiency of high priority roadways, railways, water, and air services that are essential to the economy.
Okay, I'm going to pick it up with public infrastructure and utilities. So we have several goals under this, and the first is to expand upon publicly available information on the Woodbury County website. I know that they've been working on the website right along. Encourage energy efficiency for residential, commercial, and industrial consumers in Woodbury County. Basically, that's a lot of this is bringing awareness, making sure that we're communicating what's out there. Support technological advances in energy production, working to diversify and expand energy sources. Goal is to ensure safe drinking water for all rural Woodbury County residents. So that's supporting some education and compliance with state and federal standards. Goal is to protect ground and surface water from contamination. So providing information to residents about septic system maintenance and inspections, especially when transferring properties from owners. I think that gets lost sometimes. And fertilizer and animal waste runoff. Encourage stormwater management practices to help capture those contaminants. A goal is to encourage practices that increase water efficiency among county residents, commercial establishments, institutions, and municipal utilities. So establishing best practices in county buildings and encouraging that in residences and commercial establishments. Goal is to improve internet access for rural Woodbury County residents. So taking advantage of those federal and state sources of funding to improve broadband in rural areas. Expand cellular service in rural Woodbury County. So coordinating with the telecommunications companies to address areas where cellular service is poor. Goal is to promote waste reduction and recycling practices. This was actually a hot topic in the steering committee as we talked about it. So some things they wanted to make sure to address: reduce and enforce illegal dumping in Woodbury, rural Woodbury County, provide education on handling and disposal of trees and brush, and coordinate across jurisdictions to address waste management and recycling gaps. A last goal under this is to expand the network of public electric vehicle charging stations to rural Woodbury County, and utilizing some of those funding sources when it's applicable.
And then the community facilities and services, we have expand access to health services throughout rural Woodbury County. Provide more opportunities for outdoor recreation activities. So this includes improving access to the river, expanding trails, and maintaining the county parks. Increase access to family-friendly activities and cultural opportunities. Strive to offer the most efficient, cost-effective, and user-friendly community services as possible. And provide adequate police, fire, and emergency management services for all residents.
Okay, I'm going to move on to land use and natural resources. That's a lot of words. I won't say that many words up there. Okay, the first goal is to support sustainable agricultural practices. So this is, I'm just going to pick out a few in here to touch on. Comply with the Iowa State Code provisions for agriculturally zoned property. Use best practices to reduce soil, fertilizer, and waste runoff, and preserve good water quality. Consider the impacts of fragmenting large tracts of farmland, and advocate for the preservation of agriculture in urban fringe areas not identified in the future land use map for urban growth. Second goal is to preserve environmentally sensitive lands. So some things, consider how environmentally sensitive lands are developed, and strengthen erosion control policies and grade and excavation limitations for development in the Luss Hills. Third goal, limit urban sprawl and maintain the rural character of Woodbury County. So prioritize the rehabilitation of existing housing stock and infill. Limit interstate development to interchanges or within city limits to preserve agricultural land and maintain scenic views of the Luss Hills. Discourage leapfrog development and encourage development in a compact pattern. Fourth goal is empower landowners to be a partner in combating ecologically and economically harmful invasive and noxious species. Educate the public about effective identification, control, and disposal of invasive species, including how to handle the emerald ash borer. Reduce contaminants in surface water runoff. So here we're kind of talking about providing resources about methods to address non-point source pollution, like no-till cover crops, crop rotation, buffers, things like that. Next goal, safeguard groundwater by identifying and limiting sources of pollution. Next goal, identify potential sources of air quality hazards in Woodbury County. Next goal, maintain safe distances between industrial land use activities and residential, commercial, recreational, and institutional land uses. Next one, plan for, there we go. This one I included everything because it's a hot topic, obviously, from what we've been talking about. So plan for the creation and use of alternative and renewable energy sources in Woodbury County. The first objective under that is to support landowners' individual choices to implement renewable energy infrastructure. Continuously update policies that regulate renewable energy infrastructure to ensure that it does not present safety hazards and to minimize disruption to surrounding land uses. And the third, seek federal and state funding for the expansion of electric vehicle charging infrastructure. So I guess to pause, that one may have some changes given our discussion. So we'll figure out how best to handle those changes if there would be any. I am gonna, so the next slide, there we go. Future land use map. I just had a note on that. I had a note on that about We did not change with the workshopping and stuff, we did not change the future land use map a lot. Some of that was a directive. And a lot of that had to do with wanting to preserve the rural character of the county and preservation of agriculturally zoned land. So that's kind of why the map looks like it does. We added a little bit of industrial, a little bit of commercial along Highway 20, South Bridge interchange. You can't really see it on there, but it's there. I should say the upcoming South Bridge interchange. And then around Salix and Sloan had a little bit of additional as well. So I wanted to point out the changes that were made, very, very minor. And that was kind of where we landed after discussions. I think that was the only note I had on that. So I can move on to disaster response, recovery, and resiliency. I am going to pause. This part of the funding for this plan came from back in 2020. We received a grant award for a CARES Act planning grant. So that was kind of how this comprehensive plan started, really, the updated. I know it was in talks probably to be updated, but part of the CARES Act guidance and some of the other guidance that's come out on long-range planning, we really chose to address disaster response, recovery, and resiliency in many different ways. So it's not just necessarily hazardous or weather-related disasters, but also economic disasters and public health disasters. So just pointing that out, that this might look a little bit different sometimes than what a public safety or disaster response chapter would look like. Have a little bit more in it. So again, I won't use that many words. The first goal is to ensure residents access to safe, healthy, and efficient homes that are prepared to withstand increasingly frequent, severe, and unpredictable weather. Second, coordinate disaster response, recovery, and resiliency efforts among jurisdictions, county, state, and federal agencies. So fostering those interagency agreements in our surrounding, towns and counties, keeping that line of communication open between all of those parties, and then working with state and federal officials in preparation of and response to disaster declarations and relief. Next goal is to encourage passive development within the 100-year floodplain areas. Considering the best site plan design, best building practices, things like that when developing in the floodplain occurs. Next goal is to support the county emergency management and emergency services department's missions to provide the most efficient services to Woodbury County and to mitigate against, prepare for, respond to, and recover from all disasters. So this kind of talks about participating in training exercises. We have a really good local emergency planning commission that helps put those together. Work to educate the public on disaster preparedness, recovery, and resiliency, and ensure adequate funding to do so. Next goal is to continue supporting the Siouxland District Health Department in their mission to lead a collaborative effort to build a healthier community through improved access to health services, education, and disease prevention. And finally, the last goal, support the recovery and resiliency of industries, businesses, and homes in the event of a natural or public health disaster. So in this section, we talk a little bit about ensuring reliable internet and telecommunication services to keep home-based businesses and schools operational in the event of a disaster. Support economic relief programs put in place after disasters for entities with the highest need, and allow for flexibility in ordinances to encourage business as usual in some of these disaster events. So that was a lot of words. I really tried. So that's just, again, we have the packets that have all of the information in it. It's been a long process, but in the end, we did, as Simcoe staff, we really tried to encompass everything that we heard. And we know that a development plan is not going to it's not going to capture everything, and it's not going to please everyone. And we will do the best we can to respond to any of that feedback that we get, to improve it in any way we can. So, thank you.
Thank you. Right now. Okay, public, do you have any questions for our Simcoe people at this point in time? We're going to be going over this information, I think, over a period of time. So this is not over by any means. So if you'd like to ask questions, this would be the time to do it. Oh, there'll be more opportunities as we get into it. Absolutely.
I'm David Lynn, 1410 Michigan Correctionville. If you pull the map up and take a look at it, you can see that the green area for open space or parks, I think that's excessive. If you're a cow-calf guy in Woodbury County and his land comes up for sale, if you have to bid against the County Conservation Board, it's not going to be a good thing. I mean, I'm not against parks. We've already got 5,000 acres of parks within the county. I don't think we need that much more. That's my thought.
Thank you.
Doyle Turner, 2738 200 Street, Mobile. The one thing that when I go to other states and other areas, when I see acreages and houses that look like they should be in town that are along farm to market roads, and when I look at from Sergeant Bluff to Bronson, from Bronson to Lawton, from Salix to Sergeant Bluff, it's all considered residential. And the problem is you make these are farm to market roads and you make them into city streets. I think we need to limit how much residential we put on those farm to market roads, because you've got semis going up and down there all the time. This equipment is only getting bigger, and Sioux City is still a hub for agricultural products. And the only route that is left to get into Sioux City that would technically be safe would be Highway 20. So I'm thinking that is something that we need to come up with a plan somehow, how we build residential into our area without having driveway after driveway after driveway. So thank you.
Hey, Scott Hennings here, 6701 6th Ave. I just wanted to apologize. I made my comment earlier. It was really for this section, so I apologize.
Anyone else?
Have to close the hearing.
Okay. Okay, so we need a motion to close the public hearing on this item on the agenda. You have no further questions or comments from the public? You want
I'd move to close the public hearing.
to? In a second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Right? Commissioners, do you have comment?
I guess I'd like to thank you for your time and efforts, and my comparison of the land use maps had nothing to do with anything negative. And one thing I'd just like to point out, that when you're looking at this map, that's not zoning, that's just land use. So it doesn't mean that the area is all going to be for parks, or it's just, that's where it could potentially go. So I just to clarify or point that out, that's all the map is future land use
Potentially.
possibility.
Yeah. Anyone else? Commissioner? If not, we're going to move on to the next item. Okay, next item on the agenda. You don't have yours, do you? Item number 6 is public comment on matters not on the agenda. Okay, I'm not seeing or hearing any movement or any comments. The next item on the agenda is number 7, commissioner comment or inquiry. And again, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank you all for your participation, for your comments, for your research, for your time, for your effort, everything you've helped provide to us over the course of months. So thank you very much. Okay, then we're going to move on to next item, which is the staff update, number 8.
Yeah, just one update. I guess I should have referenced it back at the comprehensive plan. We'll have to look at scheduling kind of what's forward for the approval of this document. And so we're definitely going to need at least a public hearing at the zoning commission level to kind of go through it, how we have to do by code and everything. So that's definitely something that we'll need to work through as a schedule for the spring, because once it gets out of the commission, then it goes to the 3 hearings at the supervisor level where they would ultimately adopt it by resolution. So I would encourage you to kind of keep in mind some dates when you would want to take it up or kind of read through it in further detail. So the other item that I have is I got some good news today from DNR. It looks like our new flood maps, hopefully cross our fingers, around July 17th of this year, we're likely going to be able to have those new effective maps in place. So you might recall back in 2022, I think it was April or May, Zoning Commission recommended approval of the new updated floodplain ordinance, which we're required to basically adopt. The supervisors approve that. Right now, what DNR is doing is they're currently looking through our ordinance that we had passed, and they're going to come back and tell us how we need to modify our floodplain ordinance in anticipation for this July 17th date. And it could be as simple as changing the date and the map code in the ordinance. So we're likely going to have a public hearing and a discussion on what those draft floodplain maps are. And just for the benefit of the public, I would like to, on our computer screen here, go to the Woodbury County website. And if you go to woodburycounty.iowa.gov, get to this site, you'll want to find the departments, and the zoning departments under the community and economic development page. So you go there, and all these different tabs kind of come up for land use, and you would want to go to floodplain development. This button here, floodplain development, describes the regulations of the floodplain across Woodbury County. And so right now it points to our effective maps. You can actually do a search to find whether a particular address is in the floodplain. But by statute, we have to go off of the existing floodplain maps. But if you scroll down here, there's a button under floodplain development resources, external links. The second option here is called draft floodplain map viewer. You would want to click on that item. And what happens is this item pops up and you want to find Woodbury County, and you'll see many counties across the state. It shows the status of their floodplain map. And you go down to Woodbury and you see that we're in preliminary status. So we're hoping that'll switch over to effective on that July 17th date. But you come to this here and you'll end up with a map, and you can come in and search on an address to sort of zero in on an area that shows you where the draft floodplain areas are. And these blue areas are your particular zone A floodplain. But I highly encourage property owners to search and kind of compare what the floodplain may look like on their property. It seems to be a net effect where it's improving for a lot of landowners. These new maps come out as a result of them flying over and using 2-foot LiDAR modeling technology to kind of scope out the floodplain. So we can't promise that it improves for everybody. There's definitely areas that some may go into, some may not go into. Those that have operated under LOMAs and scenarios where you get yourself out of the floodplain in the past, you would probably want to review that and see how that map coincides with your LOMA. There is the ability, if it doesn't look that, great as far as mapping, that you could pursue a LOMA process as well to remove under this new situation. But it's important for landowners to be aware of that before any kind of building, any kind of projects, to always consult with the, find out about the floodplain. Please contact staff, but you will likely be hearing more this spring as we're gonna have to, by statute, move toward amending our map to basically point to the new map. That's ultimately what the ordinance would do there. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to give us a call. But that's all I've got.
Oh, well, that leads us to the final item on the agenda, which is adjournment. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate that.